Magalhael to Stokes, who's onside. 1-0.
Here's Sims. It's a good serve this from Southampton. They could finish the job here. It's Shane Long, and he has done it. Just a minute to play. That's stoppage time. Here's Letizia. Who better to say farewell than one of the finest players ever to wear the red and white.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Saints FC podcast. It is I, John Bailey. I'm back. I'm sat next to my brother James Bailey.
Hello.
James, hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. We're back together in Bath, where we grew up, and we're just going to do a very, very quick version of the podcast to have a look at the West Ham United game, which we were both at yesterday evening. So I think we were all heading there. That was my Christmas present to go to West Ham United. It was my dad's birthday present. We were all pretty excited, and I think we were all expecting a win for once, which wasn't necessarily the case a little while back.
Yeah, I think so. I think the last two wins on the bounce and the new manager coming in and the just wholly improved performances the two games before the West Ham one. I think, I went there expecting us to win. I think I said 3-1 before the match. Obviously it didn't happen, but,
Yeah, I went for 3-2 to Saints, so I got one of the scorelines correct, in the fact that West Ham would score 2 goals. But, I mean, overall it was quite a disappointing performance, and there were quite a lot of things that were evident about why Saints didn't win the game. From the start of the game, the team lineup was pretty much as we expected, with Højbjerg being out injured. Lamina seemed a clear kind of obvious person to bring in for the replacement. The BBC had hinted that Michael Obafemi was going to be starting, and in actual fact he wasn't even on the bench, so we're presuming that he was injured for yesterday's fixture. I haven't heard anything about that. And I don't know, I think, the first kind of 10 minutes of the game, we saw Saints with that, emphatically high tempo, the high press. The forwards were getting onto the West Ham United defenders when they're on the ball. We were winning the ball back high up in their half. And it was really, really exciting. It looked really, really promising. And yet after about 10 minutes, we seemed to run out of steam.
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely it looked like the using the same starting 11 for the third game on the trot. In third game in 10, 11 days. Yeah, definitely had an impact on the performance. You could see they came out with the energy that they did against Arsenal and against West Ham, and I think after about 5-10 minutes it dissipated in the cold weather and just I think they just looked tired, but so did West Ham. I think also looked tired.
Yeah, and there's a lot of evidence of tiredness all across the pitch. Not only in the fact that our high press died out pretty quickly, but also in the fact that players were just giving the ball away all of the time. I think Mario Lamina, for me, he probably gave away the ball almost half the time that he had the ball. I haven't managed to find the stats to kind of corroborate that, but he seemed to be kind of running at the exact opposite of the Mario Lamina song.
Yeah. I think in comparison to Højbjerg, who is replacing, I think there's definitely a difference in pass completion rate. But then I think also Lamina does do a lot to get the ball as well. But I think it's almost the way he gets the ball. It's sort of always quite messy, so it's almost like half the time he makes a tackle, but he doesn't actually finish getting the ball off the West Ham players, who got closed down quite easily.
He's quite a hectic player. He's quite unpredictable. And actually, I thought yesterday one of the things that Saints lacked, particularly in midfield, was a player with a little bit more maturity, a little bit more I don't know, maybe a little bit more in the head, which therefore gives him more time on the ball to actually see things and dictate play. Whereas I think with Lamina, he's got buckets of talent, but it's all kind of quite, not so much random, but it's quite instinctive with him. I think, football happens to Lamina and he happens to be quite good at it, whereas Højbjerg is maybe more of a player that can dictate what happens on a football pitch. He can run the show. And that's what we missed in midfield. I don't think Stuart Armstrong is kind of quite that sort of player. He's a great attacking outlet, but he certainly doesn't seem to be the sort of player that can control the game in the same way that someone like Højbjerg can.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where one of the things we were missing going forward was I feel with the way Højbjerg performs, you can sort of see Danny Ings and Redmond sort of know where Højbjerg's going to be looking to pass the ball and running into that position, and you didn't really get that feeling with Lamina, like especially the long periods of play where we didn't get the ball into their box. That was sort of the bit where we were lacking, was getting that place from midfield into the attacking in the final third.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think I probably noticed with probably Danny Ings and the balls that we're playing into the box is that it's quite evident that Danny Ings was very, very tired. He lacked a bit of the pace that we've seen him have. And the West Ham United defence actually looked very strong and very quick in comparison to Danny Ings. So that every time he managed to get the ball in the box, he was always going to be second place to the ball. And Target put in a couple of nice searching balls from the left-hand side, the curling ones in. But he just was never going to quite reach it. And we happened to be sat in the chapel end for this game. So we had West Ham attacking that end for the whole first half. And I've got to admit, I felt like when we went in at half-time 0-0, I thought we were pretty fortunate to be in that position.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was 2 or 3 shots. I think it was by Lucas, the West Ham player who really should have just put the ball away. They just passed him on the penalty spot, and he should have put it away and instead just scuffed it wide. And it's a similar position where Arsenal scored their first goal against us. Is that space just around the penalty spot when teams are attacking our box? It seems that our centre backs all pour into the 6-yard box, leaving that space there, and we have been opened up a lot this season in that position.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect with 3 in the centre of defence that maybe you could have 2 of the defenders in the 6-yard box and one person mark in the middle of that box. But no doubt that's the space that really is supposed to be filled by someone like Romeo or Lamina coming back and joining the defence at those times when we're getting overloaded. Having said that, I actually don't think our defence did too badly yesterday. I mean, Vestergaard is starting to look more of a defender than a liability. I thought Yoshida looked particularly accomplished yesterday. He actually seemed to be a kind of a cool head amongst a game where most people seem to be losing their minds, losing the passes, losing the ball, and actually seemed to be quite calm, apart from maybe one clearance where he passed it straight to a West Ham United attacking midfielder in the second half. But
yeah, but I think he was in that position. I think he was that specific instant. I think Andy Carroll had just garroted him during a corner, and so he was still in a bit of a daze, I think.
I mean, do we want to talk about Andy Carroll now before we talk about the goals? Because, I mean, he had a cameo appearance in the game, but he managed to achieve quite a lot in that short period of time. I think he managed to have a fight with Vestergaard down in front of the technical areas where they just kind of kept on prodding each other and then complaining to the linesman who just wasn't doing anything. They kind of looked like a pair of overgrown teenagers having a little bit of a schoolboy scrap. But I thought, the most Andy Carroll thing was for him to headbutt Jan Bednarek, go down clutching his face, win the free kick, and Jan Bednarek to end up with a yellow card. I mean, that was just astonishing, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think Andy Carroll, he's obviously, in his career, has obviously lost its way in the football that he plays, because West Ham don't really get him on the pitch that often anymore. But when he does now, he seems to perform like almost like a Mr. Blobby, where West Ham send him on, and they don't really know what he's going to do, but they know he's going to smash through a couple of people and just create havoc in the middle of the pitch. I mean,
is that how Mr. Blobby played football? Because I was unaware of Mr. Blobby's footballing prowess.
No, it's just what Mr. Blobby does, isn't he?
He just causes chaos.
Yeah, turns up, causes chaos, breaks stuff, and everyone just questions his existence, right?
It's a crowd pleaser, you know.
Exactly.
Southampton don't look up to much. They look pretty knackered. Let's throw on Andy Carroll for a bit of a laugh. Kind of. Is that what they're doing?
I think so. I think they were just like, oh, well, we don't have many options on the bench. Andy Carroll will make stuff happen. It's like playing like a random card in poker. You don't know what's going to happen,
but something
will happen, and it's like flipping a coin. Someone will win.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, Andy Carroll's had his moment on this podcast. First half, Saints weren't up to much. They already looked exhausted before the end of the first half. Second half started. I wasn't expecting too much from the second half. Certainly, I'd already thrown in my bin in the bin the 3-2 prediction. I just couldn't see it scoring 3 goals. I was kind of finding it quite hard to see where we're going to get a single goal from. In fact, at that point, but we did manage it.
Yeah, we did in a
rather scrappy manner.
In probably one of the scrappiest goals of the year. That one with was it three deflected, scuffed shots, and then the ball was bundled into the back of the net, where one of 3 people could have been the person that got the last touch. You really cannot tell.
No, but I tell you what, we all thought where we were sat. I mean, we were sat pretty much behind that goal where it went in. And the TV cameras didn't pick it up, but a couple of the West Ham players were really complaining about this goal. And the reason is because we all saw Redmond basically push it in with his arm, didn't we?
Yeah, I think that's what I was turned to. So that looked like a handball. Yeah. And it was one of those goals where you sort of like,
you're looking around, not sure if you're going to celebrate or not.
I can't celebrate this one yet because I don't think is that going to be out. You look around the referee, the linesman, everywhere, and you're like, okay, yeah, it is a goal. Even at the players, because the players didn't look immediately like they were convinced it was a goal either.
Well, I think they might have thought it was an offside, but actually we've watched back the replay and it definitely wasn't offside. But it was so scrappy the way the ball went into the goal that even if Redmond did handle it, which we think he probably did, I don't know if you could say it was intentional. I mean, he just lobbed his body at the ball in the hope that some part of it would hit it and the momentum would carry the ball into the net. And
yeah, I mean, the ball was already going into the goal when his hand made contact with the ball. And like, as we were saying, we've just tried to watch back the highlights and see what the TV version says, and
from about 5 or 6 different angles, it doesn't become any clearer, does it?
No, which is probably why it hasn't been discussed by any of the commentators either.
So anyway, quite lucky to get that lead. Didn't last very long though, did it?
No, classic Southampton.
We don't like leads, do we?
No, no, we don't. So yeah, I think yesterday was one of those games where you think, okay, Arsenal 3-2, we played really well. We were probably quite lucky. It's just that the chance we created goals, and then Huddersfield 3-1 convincing victory, and you're like, well, that's because Huddersfield really performed like one of the worst teams in the league, and which they are,
yeah.
And then West Ham, you come across who are competent and they've got good players,
and they've been on a pretty good run. I mean, until the 2-0 loss at Watford earlier this week, they'd won 4 games on the bounce, hadn't they? So
yeah,
that's quite convincing form.
Yeah, I think so, and I think they're sort of sort of unconvincing mid-table team. Like you never know what you're going to get with them. Sometimes you'll get a complete and utter mess, and sometimes you'll get a very convincing team. And I think we got somewhere between the two, where we got for long periods a bit of a mess, and then for the periods when they scored the goals, a very strong, convincing team that like really went out there and won the game
Yeah, and I look at West Ham and I think the current Saints squad are capable of being where West Ham are in the table. Quite easily capable of being there.
Yeah.
And it was quite an even game, and the difference was Anderson. Except the difference between West Ham and Southampton is Southampton will never pay £40 million more, that sort of price for a player. However, we do much better at West Ham at kind of picking, unproven players and then them coming good. But I mean, Anderson was. He was great yesterday. He was really good, and he didn't look knackered like the rest of the players on the pitch. I'm not sure why that is. I don't know what his game time has been like for West Ham. I haven't been following them particularly closely this season. But he looked really good. He looked really strong. He looked composed on the ball. That strike for his first goal, the equaliser, which came, 2.5 minutes after Saints got into the lead, was really wonderful. And, I've seen McCarthy come in for some criticism. Is that fair? Is that unfair?
I don't really think it is fair in those two goals that Anderson scored. And the first one was just like a screamer from outside the box. I think you could criticise the defenders for not getting closer to him, because I think that's probably what we did in the first half. Is we closed him down, and so he didn't actually have a shot, and so he didn't create any problems for us. But then in the second half, both goals, he found himself with a lot of space and put them away. And I think especially the second goal, I mean, it was 4 against 1. Jan Valery can't really do anything about that apart from close down the guy with the ball, and that leaves the other 3 players open to attack, and that happened. They played a good pass and they got themselves in a position where you expect any football player to score from there. Yeah,
absolutely. With that second goal, I mean, we heard a very few brief moments on the kind of radio phone-in on BBC 5 Live afterwards, and someone had messaged in saying, that's absolutely atrocious defending. How can you leave only one person back? But, Saints were trying to be positive at the time. They were looking to get...
Yeah, we were looking to win the game.
Take the lead again and win the game. And we had lots of players committed forward. And I think this really is where the tiredness kind of caught up with us, because the players, when they were chasing back, weren't quick enough. I also think maybe we followed the ball a bit too much. No one kind of chased Anderson specifically, seeing him being the obvious person that the ball was going to go to, which, I mean, from our position behind the goal, we could see that whole move forming, and it's quite clear what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Is that bad defending? Is that a bit of naivety? Is it just lacking a bit of fitness, lacking, that speed when it came to dealing with that counter attack?
Yeah, I think. I think it was a bit of. I don't know. I think we were set up positionally. I'm sure Hasenhuttl will bring the positions of the players up in front of them today or tomorrow when they're back in the training ground, and point out where a couple of people probably were out of position, because it looked like everyone was in the box, and there weren't the odd player lurking outside the box that could still defend if the ball was cleared. And I think that's where we fell short. But I think defensively as a whole, I think there's still quite a lot of work to do for Hasenhuttl. I think he tried to play 4 at the back, and that clearly didn't work against Cardiff. And we're now playing 5 at the back, and we're still conceding goals, and we're still and in the last 2 games, okay, those goals haven't been humiliating errors
in the same way that most of the goals
in the same way that
conceded.
the rest of the season has been.
Yeah.
But they're still goals, and we're still not keeping clean sheets. So, I mean, hopefully we'll see that defensive improvement over the course of, I'll say, the next few games, because maybe in the next 5 or 6 games, as we've got Man City and Chelsea next.
Yeah. It's funny yesterday when I look back at that game, and I think really the area that we lost the game was the midfield. I think we gave the ball away too much. We weren't quite as purposeful as we should have been in the attack. Redmond was doing well again, but quite a lot of things that he tried didn't come off. I mean, but that's quite typical of the sort of player Redmond is. He's the kind of player that tries stuff. Yeah. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Lamina was a bit too frenetic for me, not calm enough on the ball. Armstrong didn't quite get into the game enough. Danny Ings was a little bit knackered. When Shane Long came on, he looked promising, but got the final ball wrong on a couple of occasions. Matt Targett's crossing was pretty hit and miss. He had some really good ones in the first half, some pretty poor ones in the second half. Yeah, and Valerie, I didn't think it did too bad. I saw he got quite a lot of stick on Twitter, but not totally sure why he's been pulled out by the Saints fans for that. Did you notice anything with Valerie?
No, I think he's 4-5 games into his Southampton career at the moment, and he's young, and he's obviously talented, and he's doing as you'd expect for a young player to. You can't expect them to not make mistakes. However, we haven't conceded a single goal where it's a header at the back post because someone's half a foot taller than him yet. So he does have that benefit over Cedric Suarez, and I think he's very good going forward.
Yeah.
I think he's probably a little bit found out defensively, but I think that's why we're playing 3 centre backs, is so that he has that support.
Yeah, and actually, having watched Hasenhuttl Southampton in the flesh for the first time, it's clear that it's not so much a 5-2-3, but more of a 3-4-3, I suppose,
3-4-2,
or a 3-4-1-2,
yeah,
something like that. Valerie and Targett are being very much used as wingers more than they are as defenders. West Ham game pretty disappointing. I think it was more to do with tiredness than it was to do with any kind of major tactical failings or really kind of like standout individual errors or poor performances. I don't think this bodes particularly well for having Manchester City this weekend, because I'm guessing that Manchester City's players are going to be fitter and stronger than the Southampton players. And judging from what I've heard, about Mark Hughes' level of training that happened on the training ground, I think our players are going to struggle with their fitness this season until Hasenhuttl really brings them up to speed.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've really got to hope we create a goal very quickly. Otherwise we're gonna get found out. I just can't see us holding them off for 90 minutes. But you never know. They have been found out twice in the last week, so maybe third time lucky. No, the other way around.
Well, for Man City, that would be a third.
Maybe we'll get a hat trick of Man City losses.
I mean, I don't think any Crystal Palace fans were going into the game against Man City expecting them to get a victory at the Etihad. I doubt there were that many Leicester fans really expecting them to beat Man City. I'm certainly not expecting us to beat Manchester City, and I would be very, very, very surprised if we do. But strange things happen in football. I think the thing with Leicester, the game when I watched the highlights, they had Man City on the ropes for quite long periods in that second half. It was very, very impressive. Maddison, I'm gutted that we missed out on him and he chose Leicester. But, I mean, you can't really argue with his decision. He's clearly made the right choice in terms of what it's done for his career. He's performed fantastically well. And Leicester City still have some really, really good players, whereas Southampton we're very much playing catch up at the moment with Hasenhuttl just coming in mid-season.
Yeah, I think so. But I think we're now in a position where the players have to look at themselves and go, okay, we've shown that we can play well. We've shown that we can beat teams now. What are we going to do? Are we going to aim to just stay out of the relegation zone and perform like that, or are we going to aim to do what West Ham are doing at the moment, where they looked very poor at the start of the season and then got going and started moving up the table, or like what Everton did last season, where they started poorly and again kicked on. And I think this is where the Southampton players really have to go. Is like, well, we've shown we can put these performances. We need to go out every week and try and win the game. And we look like we can win games now.
Yeah.
Even if Man City might be a step too far. And we've got a huge area to improve in comparison to the game at the Etihad.
Yeah.
We certainly, they can at least go out there and show that they're not going to get torn apart by a better side. They make it difficult for them.
Well, we certainly hope so. Anyway, one of the things I want to mention is, like, Tom Parker's been banging on all season about, once Redmond gets a goal, then more will go in for him. He got a good goal against Huddersfield. He got a very, very scrappy goal against West Ham at St Mary's. He did very well against Manchester City a couple of seasons ago, and then also he had that odd kind of exchange with Pep Guardiola.
Yeah.
Are we going to see Redmond get his third goal in 3 games against Man City?
I hope so. I think if we don't see it at the weekend, I think we'll see it soon, because I think from the start of the season he's looked like a completely different player. I mean, we've talked about how he apparently looks like he looked at the way he played last season and wasn't happy with it, and then went off in the summer and started and improved, came back better, and he looks like a better player. He looks so much more committed, and I think it was almost a matter of time throughout the season that things were going to click and he was going to start getting the goals and the assists that we all sort of expect him to get.
Yeah.
And good on him, because it just shows that hard work gets you the results that you deserve.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, he was still going to take home the same salary regardless of whether he went away and spent all summer working on his game or not. And you've got to say, you've got to look at Nathan Redmond and say that is your model professional football player, in the fact that he spotted something wrong with his game, he's gone away, he's tried to improve it, and now it's starting to pay off for him. I hope that we can kind of continue a bit of this momentum that we started under Hasenhuttl. I think the next Manchester City and Chelsea game is going to be really, very, very tough for us to get any points out of those 2 games. Maybe we can do something, but really it's the whole rest of the season that we've got to look towards. And I think the fitness levels will improve under Hasenhuttl. I mean, the games do come thick and fast, but players will get better, they will get stronger, and if we continue to support the team and back the team, and I think the players have got more belief in themselves. So we are kind of where we are. We're out of the relegation zone, which I didn't think we would be at this point in the season, and I think really the only way for Saints is up. I don't expect us to be kind of falling back into that zone anytime soon. I think we'll kind of kick on towards the lower half of mid-table.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be parallels with. I think this season it's looking like there'll be parallels with our first season in the Premier League when we returned under Nigel Adkins, where we were from the outset in a relegation battle, and then Pochettino came in. Although I think in that first season, Pochettino came in and you saw the change on the pitch, but you didn't actually see the change in the points that quickly. Although we did eventually creep out, we still weren't getting the performances that we got in the next season. We still weren't beating the lesser team, or the teams that we ought to beat. Yeah, we ought to be. I think there's about 14 teams in this league, or 13 teams in this league, that we go out and we think, well, we can beat this team. I don't think you can expect to beat them all the time, but you expect to be able to.
I don't think West Ham United is one of those teams. I think if Hasenhuttl is still our manager next season, if we're still in the Premier League next season, which I expect, both of those statements to be true next season, I would hope that it would be quite a good comparison, to see how do we compete against West Ham United, where we looked tired, we gave the ball away, right at the start of his reign. Let's see where we are next season under similar sort of opposition, and I think I'm expecting an improvement. I'm still feeling positive. There was a lot of negative comments in the crowd yesterday. There was a couple of people sat around me which were making lots of grumbling. There was a guy in front of me who was almost seeming like he was willing Saints to get beaten and to lose. I don't know whether maybe he was related to Mark Hughes or an old friend of Mark Hughes, but I just couldn't believe some of the stuff that he was coming out with. And it's odd to hear that in St Mary's, having had 2 back-to-back victories before then. I mean, maybe he's a person who doesn't go that regularly. And
maybe he hasn't watched either of the games.
Yeah. Because I think if you'd only read about it, you hadn't watched the highlights or watched the games live, you might have been a bit miffed at yesterday's performance. Anyway, I don't know. Do you have any more points to make, James, before we wrap this one up?
Not really. Not about the game. I mean, on the whole, I'm very happy. I think it's the first podcast I've been on since Hasenhuttl's come in.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy with him. I think he's going to be excellent. Maybe we are a bit early, to see how good he's going to be, and a bit early to say, we're not in a relegation battle anymore, because we definitely still are until the points are on the board.
Yeah.
But the performances are showing we look like a team that can win games. We did at points against West Ham look like the team that could win the game.
Yeah.
And certainly we're not. They don't look like a bunch of players that are looking, or even a manager looking for excuses, which I found.
Yeah.
Mark Hughes did.
Yeah, it's quite promising to see. Also want to say hello to Paul. He introduced himself in the stadium at full time yesterday. So hello, Paul. And I suppose, really, that's it from us. If you want to get in contact, we're on Twitter at Saints FC Podcast, or also Saints FC Podcast at gmail.com. You can also put comments on the YouTube channel on the Ugly Inside, where the podcast videos go up. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you've all had a wonderful Christmas. Let's hope for a bit of a minor footballing miracle at the weekend against Manchester City.
Yeah.
Cheerio, everyone.
Bye-bye.